Roger, welcome to Free Your Voice.
Glad to be back with you after so many years.
It has been so long. I remember the first time in person that I had met you, and I had been told that your name was Bitcoin Jesus, and I had done a podcast with you, but I met you in person and you didn't look like the Messiah.
I guess I just look a bit like a normal guy. So
You definitely do look like a normal guy. And we spent some time in Singapore. Remember one of the most remarkable moments that I had seen anybody that of your success. And while I've met people and a lot of people around the world, and success is all relative, you're a very well known figure. And I remember that we were standing in a taxi line and you had said to a group of people, and you weren't showing off. I didn't have a camera, I didn't have a microphone. You said to a group of people, "Hey, do you have any cryptocurrency?" And this group turned around and said, "No." And you said, "Take out your phone, download this app. Okay, give me your phone. Permission?" Yep. They gave you their phones one by one. And then you took your phone and you sent over on a peer-to-peer electronic cash transfer. You sent over $50 to each of these strangers. Why did you do that?
to be honest, I don't remember that specific instance, but I've done that more times than I can possibly, count at this point in my life. The earliest instances of that were on Facebook in like 2011. I told anybody, you have to pay attention to Bitcoin. Go and get the wallet here, and then post your address in the comments below. And I sent everybody initially an entire whole Bitcoin, which today is worth over $60,000. But at the time, it was worth a dollar or two, or whatever. And these were all this is before I had any sort of notoriety. These were people that I was actually friends with on in real life, and that's probably why I was friends with them on Facebook. But I wanted to tell everybody that I could possibly get to listen about this amazing new invention of peer-to-peer electronic cash for the world, because it's truly one of the most important inventions in all of humankind, and I want people to know about it sooner rather than later. And I still feel that way.
And you showed me in this moment how easy it was to send money, that it didn't require this intermediary. It didn't require a large percentage of a fee or transaction. You know the history of my family. And I had sent my dad a couple of years ago. My dad called me and he was in a bad spot. His car had broken down and he needed some money. So I had to go to Walmart, a Western Union, and to send him the about 500 US dollars cost me about 6%. So you're talking about an enormous, and that's a very small sum of money, $500. Imagine you're sending 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 to some other volumes. That what this space represents, the digital asset world represents, is this ability to move money seamlessly. But it's also transparent because you were called a criminal. I know because I Googled you. You were called a criminal. You and many of the other earliest of I wouldn't call it investors. I would say those who adopted this new form of technology. You were called outcasts. You were considered to be pariahs. Now, with the ETF being passed and the world coming into the space, have they ever asked you for forgiveness? Like, I'm really sorry. Like, I'm
No,
really sorry we called you these things.
I think I'm still being persecuted for those sorts of things. But some of the best heroes in all of history, were criminals. People like George Washington, clearly a criminal, right? So, but I think I'm in good company there with people like George Washington, Edward Snowden, Julian Assange. These people are criminals, and these people are heroes. And so, if I'm a criminal, I guess I'll wear that badge with honor.
And what's it like being so well known? I mean, because success or fame, however you want to refer to it as, it does come with a cost.
Yeah, it can be a bit unnerving when you go into a coffee shop somewhere and people say, "Oh, you're Roger Veer," and then they want to talk to you for an hour, or you sit down, next to somebody, on an airplane even, and they recognize you. Or I think so the funniest one, maybe I was visiting a different jiu-jitsu gym in Singapore actually, and after going through the whole class and sparring with everybody, I'm talking with the different people there after class, and one of the guys goes, "Do people ever tell you look just like this one Bitcoin guy?" And I thought, "Oh, I hear that sometimes." And he didn't actually realize that it was me. So that was probably the most funny instance of that sort of thing. But it's kind of scary. You don't really have the privacy that you were used to beforehand, and so yeah, it can be a little bit unnerving sometimes.
I've seen you always as somebody that has been a giver, and you help people that sometimes don't deserve it, or people that will likely fail. Being that in entrepreneurship, it's usually not the first company someone starts that makes it. It's like the 18th or the 20th or some other number down the road. But you freely give and to support people to help them succeed. Has this always been a part of your own journey? And what is your process to it?
I don't know. One of my favorite economists is a man named Ludwig von Mises, and I don't know if he was the origin of this idea, but he's who I heard about it from first. And the idea is that an entrepreneur or a business, like the way entrepreneurs become wealthy, is by giving other people the things that they want. And so, like, that's how any entrepreneur makes a bunch of money, is by giving other people the things that they value more than the money that they give the entrepreneur. And so, I don't know. I guess it's, as Adam Smith said, it's not from the benevolence of the butcher or baker we expect our daily bread, but for his regard for his own self interest. And so, I guess in life, I've had lots of people cheat me and do bad things to me, but time and time again, I just do my best to be as nice to everybody as I possibly can. And somehow along the way, in those 45 years of life, that worked out pretty well for me. And so, if something's not broken, I'm not going to fix it. I'm going to continue to do my best to just be nice to everybody that comes across my path.
And how do you not let it impact you? Because I think last year or the past 2 years, remember the market was going up and down. There were people that wanted to see you fail. They wanted to take one moment that they didn't have all the facts. They just knew a few things of what they read. And they wanted to see the destruction of Roger. These were strangers, humans that had never met you before. They were trading communications on Twitter, or now it's X. Why do people want to see successful people fail? Why do they take pleasure in it? And you didn't fail, by the way.
Yeah, I think people always, they punch up, they don't punch down so much, right? And so when you're towards the top of the mountain, everybody's looking up. That's the target, and they're not. I think they should focus on their own lives. But another not super close friend of mine, but somebody that I know a bit on a personal level is Dan Bilzerian, and he said the same thing. Like when you're in the public's eye, everybody's gunning for you, and I found out a bit firsthand as well. Like the more you are in the public eye, the more people are just itching for you to fail. But it just should motivate you that much more strongly to go out there and try even harder and succeed even more.
Does it ever hurt your feelings, or is it past that point?
Doesn't really hurt my feelings because I know what the truth is too. Like I've seen there's all sorts of things on the internet. Some are very nice, some are very mean, but I know what the truth is, and I can hold my head up high. And so I'm not worried about the things that aren't true. I would be much more concerned about the things that are true and not nice. But thankfully, in my life, there aren't too many of those things, so I can hold my head up high each day.
That's a great perspective. You said a few minutes ago, you were mentioning some individuals that you consider to be the heroes, where others consider them to be the villains. I had a guest on my show recently, the Secretary of State of the Vatican, Cardinal Parolin. And there is a very well known actor in Hollywood that I was in discussions with to be a guest on the show. And we know each other quite well. And he called me up and he said, "Look, I can't be a guest on your show anymore." And I said, "Why?" He went, "Well, because you had someone from the Vatican." And I said, "Okay, so let me get this straight. You won't be a guest on my TV show because I had somebody from the Vatican on it." He said, "Yes. How could you support?" And I said, "Well, let me stop you right there. I don't have to support the actions that some people have done and the wrongs they have done. You're right; it is terrible, and everything I say on this show will always be used against me, and I recognize that as well. But those individuals probably, in my world, should have been punished to a higher degree. But I don't believe that everyone that has the belief in God or the belief in the Vatican are rotten human beings. And I believe that you should stand up when you can to support the good. And so it's interesting that we have this kind of this double standard because morals and ethics tend to swing in the wind, don't they? A bit, Roger?
Yeah, I've noticed that, especially in more recent times, they sure have. Or maybe it's just because I'm getting older, and so I have a bigger window to have witnessed it firsthand. But things certainly seem to be changing.
So I've been looking to my team has been building out a TikTok feed. And so I've been playing on TikTok. And I've been noticing that people that with religious symbols of all kinds, the types of stuff that they do and how inappropriate it is. So that's kind of the interesting thing is that we will rush to judgment and we will throw an entire group into a certain segment, like the world of cryptocurrency, where they will take some bad actors or people who've made some bad decisions. And people make bad decisions in the traditional banking system, do they not?
Yeah, 2008 sure was an example of that. Sure, they over and over again. There's plenty of bad decisions in the traditional banking system.
Now moving over to legacy and friendships. I mean, now you're 45, you're an old dude. How do you define friendship?
Yeah, I think the friends that I like and know and trust the most are the ones that I met and knew before I ever had, any sort of a involvement in cryptocurrency and before I became any sort of public figure. And so that real long track record really makes me appreciate the friendship that much more. And certainly, I have lots of newer friends as well who I like and appreciate. But the long term ones that I knew before Bitcoin had ever even been invented are the ones that I really feel I can trust the most at this point.
And I think it's a little bit of a challenge because I've kind of come to determine this, and somebody explained it to me this way. So I'm a bit an idea thief in some aspects, is that all relationships come with a cost, and that there will always be this exchange of interests. Have you noticed the older you're getting that maybe there's a little bit more emotional intelligence, that you're starting to hear words that you didn't hear before, or see things that you hadn't seen before that are starting to stand out for you?
I wish I could say that, but I think I'm just the type of guy, I just trust everybody completely from the first time I meet them until they give me some reason not to believe them any longer. And like I've been burned plenty of times because of that, but it's also worked out very well in the grand scheme of things. So I think I'll
So
just
you've
continue with
so
what's
you've
been working
taken
for
the
me.
optimistic approach, like to be an optimist rather than a pessimist.
Yeah, I've definitely always been an optimist. I always see the glasses, half full, or like, look at this amazing thing that's about to happen. I never, ever, ever think the worst, or take the pessimistic view at all. From day one in life, I've always been an optimistic person. So I think maybe that's also part of why I've had this amazing journey that I have. Because if you think that you can't do something, you're guaranteed to be right because you're not even going to bother to try. Whereas if you think you can do something, you might be wrong, but you're going to find out by actually trying. And so, like, I always, try and give things a try.
And that process, do you just go into it? Like you've got an idea, because we have a number of people that tune into the show that are entrepreneurs or want to be entrepreneurs. How do you take the idea out of your head? Because ideas are easy. Everyone seems to have them, but execution's really hard.
Yeah, don't be afraid to try. If you don't even try, you're guaranteed not to succeed. So you have to go and give it a try. And I think if anything, the biggest problem I have in my life is there's only so many hours in the day. There's so many things I want to try, but with so little time, you don't have enough to follow up on all of them. So, but I see a lot of people, they spend all their time just thinking or researching or planning, but they never actually start executing. And you have to go and take the step and execute. And I would rather try to execute way too many things and not plan them enough than to spend all day planning and never execute at all.
And a normal day for you, like what time does Roger Ver wake up? What time does Roger go to bed? What is he like for breakfast? Like what's a normal day for you?
Yeah, it really depends on where I am in the world and what's going on. More recently, they haven't been that exciting. Unfortunately, I broke a bone in my foot, and so I've
Ugh.
been at home for about 5 weeks now and haven't really hardly gone out at all. And just 2 days ago, I put on a shoe for the first time in over a month on that foot, and looking forward to being able to walk again. But I've had 5 weeks of nothing but being on the computer all day every day, and but I'm looking forward to healing up and then resuming my jujitsu practice. So in my ideal world, a normal day is wake up in the morning, have a little bit to eat, answer my emails, do whatever I need to do on the computer there, go to jiu-jitsu practice, come home, eat some more, and then spend the rest of the day on the computer working on whatever it is I'm working on at the moment. And I really maybe that evening I'll have dinner with some friends or family or that sort of thing. But that would be an ideal day for me.
And jujitsu, is it meditation? Is it workout? How do you see it? Because I know you've been in it for many, many years.
Yeah, I think it's all of the above, right? It's exercise, it's meditation, it's stress release, it's bonding with friends. It's just a really really wonderful hobby. And the other thing I love about it too, I can go anywhere in the world, and instantly I'll have a friend group to plug into there too, because it's just such a really really wonderful fun sport. And if for anybody that hasn't tried it yet, jujitsu isn't for everybody, but it can be for anybody. And so like go out there and give it a try and see if you like it. And it's really I've really found it to be a super important part of my life, and a real wonderful part of my life as well.
Well, the people that should have listened to you in the early days, the people that were asking you questions, you would have created. I mean, how many? Tens of thousands of multi millionaires had they have listened to your early counsel?
Yeah, probably. So I don't know the exact number, but it's certainly a big number at this point.
All right, so now you're saying add in a in your daily balance, a workout regimen. Jujitsu could be the thing to do. Do you have to be really flexible to do jujitsu? Because I'm like, man, I struggle. Like my hamstrings are really tight.
Yeah, if you're flexible, it's even better. But I can't even touch my toes, for example, and I still do just fine with my jujitsu. So
So
um,
who's Roger's favorite martial artist of all time?
I think that would have to be Kazushi Sakuraba, who was a Japanese mixed martial arts fighter in the Pride Fighting Championships back in the day, and just what an amazing, amazing, amazing athlete that guy was. And then more
You
recently, I
love Japan. You talk a lot about Japan. What is it about Japan?
I don't know. I think I'm a very on time, punctual, organized person, and I feel like the entire country of Japan is very on time, punctual, and organized, and so that just fits in very well with the way I would like to see the world work.
All right, now shifting gears into freedom of speech. Because you're one of these that you speak your mind and you don't care if it hurts Dustin's feelings or Susie's feelings. So, freedom of speech, um, is it under attack? And should we start to speak out more about the things that we believe matter? And it doesn't mean necessarily that I have to agree with you.
Yeah, it absolutely matters, and it absolutely is under attack. And maybe my lawyers will be even a little bit upset with me for telling this story, but I think it was last year now, or maybe the year before. I literally was investigated by the Federal Election Commission because I donated money to a YouTuber who ran for the nomination of the Libertarian Party to run for president later. So he didn't even get the nomination. His platform was that if he were elected, he would have and he was running for not president of the United States, and if he were elected, he would have an orderly dissolution of the United States federal government. I'm not an American any longer. I gave this guy money for years because he was spreading a philosophical message I agreed with. The Federal Election Commission wanted to prosecute me criminally for being a foreigner interfering in American elections because I gave this guy a couple $1,000 a month for a couple of years there. And eventually they deadlocked 2-2 as to whether or not to prosecute me criminally for this. The two Democrats wanted to prosecute me. The Republicans said no. And luckily, when there's a deadlock, the default is not to prosecute. And I was thinking, oh, whew, I just barely escaped this, by the skin of my teeth. And my other buddy told me, he says, no, Roger, that's the best possible outcome. And I said, what do you mean? It's deadlock 2-2. I almost got prosecuted criminally. He says, that means you pissed off the maximum number of them that you possibly can, and there's nothing they can do about it. But I still had to spend like $100,000 on lawyers, and it's such a revolving door scam. The lawyer I hired to defend me from the Federal Election Commission was the former, chair of the Federal Election Commission. So I'm paying the guy to protect me from the institution he used to work for, and the whole thing is just nuts. And my lawyers tell me often, the U.S. government, these different bureaucrats, they're really mad about my Twitter account. They're really mad about the things I say in interviews. They're really mad about the things that I say, not the things that I do. They're just mad about my mindset, that I have the mindset that like people own themselves and they shouldn't have to obey people that they've never met anywhere, somewhere else in the world. And, I've never met these people. I don't know anybody at the Federal Election Commission. Why should I have to listen to them about anything? I'm not even voting, right? I'm not even allowed to vote. So the whole thing, it's just kind of a made up superstition. I feel like when people believe that these other people have authority over them, like political authority doesn't exist. It's just a mass hallucination. The men and the guns and the police are real, and they'll toss you in jail and they'll hurt you and they'll destroy your life. But the actual authority of these people to rule over you, it doesn't exist. You're just imagining it. And it's, I guess another case of the emperor having no clothes, but most people have either been brainwashed or are too scared to say that the emperor doesn't have any clothes. The political authority doesn't exist. It's just imagined.
And brainwashing, I mean, does it happen at birth? I mean, when does this process begin? How do you see it?
All of us adults remember when we were little kids and we remembered in Santa Claus and we thought Santa Claus was real. And so like arguing over politics today is just about as realistic as arguing over, how Santa should deliver the presents. Uh, the political authority doesn't exist. They're just humans just like you or I, and they have no more of a right to rule over us than we have a right to rule over them. We don't have that right. It doesn't exist, but everyone's been brainwashed into believing it. And just like little kids are brainwashed into believing in Santa Claus, but when they get a little bit older, they realize, oh, maybe Santa's not real. And some people, when they get even older, they realize, oh, this political authority isn't real. These are just human beings just like me, and they don't have no more of a right to rule over me than I have a right to rule over them. Everybody owns themselves and owns their own life.
And so, this freedom of speech, do you see there being a line to it?
You can say anything that's peaceful, right? You can say anything. I can't threaten. Hey, I'm going to murder you next week, like you. But you say anything that's peaceful, right? You should be able to say and do anything that's peaceful.
I like that because it's interesting. We had a chief rabbi of the United Arab Emirates on, and I don't know if the show has aired yet, but I had asked him that question, and he had said to me kind of the same thing that says, look, if you're calling for the destruction or death of others, no, that shouldn't be protected and that's not okay. But peaceful, I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? That most humans, or all humans really, they just want their peace. And they're looking for their peace. And many of them are finding it in, and it's the wrong kind of peace, but they're finding it in TV. So from Netflix to name the drug. I mean, there's addictions, they come in all sorts, don't they?
Yeah, there certainly are. I guess just one more idea that popped in my mind though too, like is having someone who grew up in the U.S. They always tell you, "Oh, government has the consent of the governed," And we're finding out now, time and time again, all these crazy secret things that the US government is doing. How can the US government possibly have the consent of the governed if they're doing all these things secretly from you? You can't consent to something that's being hidden from you. And yeah, I just find the whole thing like a bit frustrating, but hopefully more and more people will, now that we have access to the internet and, permissionless like, communication tools, hopefully more and more people can start thinking, oh, maybe Santa Claus isn't real, and maybe those people living in a far off city don't have the right to rule over me after all. So
What do you think about Elon Musk?
I think he's a free speech hero without any doubt, and an entrepreneurial hero as well. I'd like to see him take a few less, government subsidies and that sort of thing. But from a practical matter, that's the world we live in, and it's hard to argue with the results that he's had. I'm certainly glad he bought Twitter and turned that back into a free speech platform. As someone who knows, how rampant the censorship over there was going on previously, I think it's fantastic that it's now much more of a bastion of free speech than it was just before he bought it.
I mean, you know the amount of attacks that you've received. I mean, at his level, how much abuse do you think he takes on a daily basis?
I would suspect he has a similar attitude to myself. He knows the truth and he's just going to speak the truth and he's not going to worry about people telling lies about them. And if he's confronted by one of them, he'll call them out on it, just like we've seen him do multiple times. He's told reporters, hey, that's a stupid question. Why are you even asking that? And, more power to him for calling out the BS when he sees it.
And what are you working on today, Roger?
I just kind of caught me off guard a little bit. I was almost at the point of thinking there was some kind of weird conspiracy going on, but my book on the hijacking of Bitcoin just got released, so you can buy it over on Amazon right now. It's on pre-sale, and the deliveries start April 5th. So the website is hijackingbitcoin.com, and a lot of people will be stunned that the amount of censorship and manipulation and propaganda that went on literally to hijack Bitcoin and morph it into a project that doesn't even remotely resemble the project that I got involved with to begin with. So, Hijacking Bitcoin is the name of that book, and a lot of people are going to be angry that I have the free speech to write a book like that.
Thank you so much for sharing your story on For Your Voice.